Okay, today's topic is Hibernate, and the definition of Hibernate is, see, Hibernate is a persistence framework which allows us to do the persistence operations. Means it's also on persistence technology. Using this technology you can do what? CRUD operations. Means you can insert, read, update, delete, anything you can do. Yeah. So now to understand what is Hibernate, why it is used, what are the advantages of using Hibernate, let us understand the architecture of our web application. See, generally when you are coding your web application, you will be using MVC architecture. So in MVC architecture, what you will be having is, you will be having the model, then you will be having the view, and you will be having the controller. So you will be having these three layers. In the controller layer, we generally end up using either servlet or JSF or struts or webwork. Like this, any of the technology you can use. Similarly, the view layer, you can use JSP, HTML or XHTML, anything you can use for displays. Now coming to the model. See, in the model, we will be having one layer called as DAO. The full form of DAO is Data Access Object. So it is in this layer we write our persistence logic. So all the persistence logic will be written where now? In the DAO layer. So Hibernate fits actually into this DAO layer. So in your web application, Hibernate, you will be seeing it in the DAO layer. Clear? So fine. So now to write our persistence logic, there are various technologies available for us. Like you have got JDBC, Hibernate is there, JPA is there, IBATIS is there. These are all technologies which support you what? Persistent operations only, nothing else. But among all this, Hibernate is the most popular and powerful one. Clear? So we'll understand why and all, and then we'll be seeing all those details now. So it is in this layer what you'll be seeing Hibernate used in your projects now. Clear? So fine now. See, most of you might be coming from the JDBC background, and if you have developed a web application, you'll be seeing using JDBC in this layer, where in DO layer. Fine. Now instead of using JDBC, if you use Hibernate, there are plenty of advantages. So that is the reason we end up using what? Hibernate. Both are doing the same task. What are they doing? They are doing CRUD operations only. Inserting, updating, deleting, reading. So same CRUD operations only they will be doing. But instead of JDBC, if you use Hibernate, there are a lot of advantages. So let me discuss what are the drawbacks of JDBC. First, little I'll discuss, then we'll see the advantages of using Hibernate over JDBC. Fine. See this, now generally you know what happens. So when the user makes a request and submits his values, he might be giving some values like name, password or whatever it is, he might give his values. So once he submits the values, here I am taking 2, multiple values will be coming, the user submits it. So once the user gives all the values, so they will enter into your DO layer. Generally, how do you bring all the values to till the DO layer? You will bring it in a TO, in a transfer object. You will bring all the values in a TO, that is transfer object. So once you bring the values in the TO, in the DO layer, what is the code you will write? So you have to write some redundant code again and again. What is that redundant code you will write? In JDBC I am talking now. So we are going to discuss all the problems with JDBC. Okay, so when the values are coming here, so what is the JDBC code you write? You have to write the code to get the connection. Then you have to retrieve the values from the TO. Then retrieve it. How will you retrieve the values from the TO? Getter methods you have to call. After calling the getter methods, then you have to do what? Write proper SQL queries. Means you have to decide whether to use statement, prepare statement or callable statement or whatever it is. You have to decide. Then you have to write your query, SQL query, correct? So then you will execute your query and finally it will be dumped into the database. So this is the redundant code what you end up writing. So means from the TO, it is the duty of the developer to get the values and store it in the database. That is for insert operation. Similarly, when you want to read the record, so that time also what you will be doing? You will write the select query, collect all the values, then what will you do? After you write the select query, all the values will be in the result set. It is the duty of the developer to retrieve the values from the result set and transfer it into the TO and then send the TO to the view layer. So now preparing the TO is your duty now when you are giving back the when you have done the read operation. So that becomes the duty of the developer. So when you are inserting also, it is the duty of the developer to get the values from the TO and store it in database. And when you are reading also, it becomes the duty of the developer to retrieve from the database, from the result set, transfer it into TO and send it to the view layer. So this is the redundant code what you go on writing. Clear? So that is one is you are writing too much of redundant code again and again. That is called as boilerplate code. Boilerplate code means writing the same code again and again. So it is a common thing now. The next thing is that is one of the major problem what we face here. So now Hibernate will overcome all these problems now. Clear? How it will be doing is, if you use Hibernate now, okay, if you use Hibernate, there are various advantages. Coding will reduce. Coding reduces. You will not be writing that boilerplate code again and again. Automatically from the TO, values will be directly dumped into what? Database. You will be doing something called as mapping. From the TO, okay, you will be having a TO now, and the TO will have properties. Like if your TO is something like Java TO like this, like if you are having user TO, name and password are the properties of what now? User TO. These will be directly mapped to what? The name column and password column of database. So any values you want to save now, employee ID, automatically it will be stored into the database. They will be mapped. So we will not be writing the getter methods and then writing the SQL query and all that. Automatically it will be inserted. Similarly, when you read the record, automatically values from the database will be taken and stored into the TO now. So coding will automatically reduce. Then next thing is your performance also will increase. So there are many advantages. Your performance will increase. Then what do you mean by performance increasing now? Because we will not be writing the SQL queries now. Hibernate itself will generate what? The SQL queries, and it knows how to execute it. So we'll be seeing it how the performance increases, but performance will definitely increase if you use Hibernate now. Then the third thing is, generally when you are working with databases, what happens is you have to learn the native SQL queries. Now what do you mean by native SQL queries? One database has its own style of SQL query. All are supporting SQL, but there is a slight variation. Like example, in MySQL you say auto increment, but in Oracle we say sequence generator. And the way you write joins in MySQL will vary in how you write the joins in Oracle. So there is a slight variation. So you have to learn the native SQL queries and then write your queries now. So it becomes a big task now. So all these problems will be reduced if you use what? Hibernate. So no native SQL queries. So these are the advantages. Yeah. So let us see this one by one. We'll start documented all these points for you here. So no native SQL queries. So everything is there in this document now. Let's start going through this document now. You see this. Hibernate is an open source framework from Red Hat organization. You know the company Red Hat? So it's a open source framework from the Red Hat organization. Architect of Hibernate is Gavin King. So Gavin King is the founder of what? Hibernate technology. Next, following are the various persistent technologies which are available in the market. Okay, so which are there? JDBC, Hibernate, NTT Bean in EJB2. Something called as NTT Bean in EJB2. Then you are having JPA, Java Persistence API in EJB3. Then you are having IBATIS, JDO, the full form of JDO is Java Data Object. Top link, like that many persistent technologies are there. Yeah, and here it is clearly listed. Hibernate is the most used persistence framework among all the persistence frameworks. Clear? So now we will move to one most important topic. What is ORM? Clear? I will be explaining you this now and what are the advantages of ORM. So let's see what is ORM now first. See, generally when you are developing your application, in your application, okay, you will be having one Java object, or generally you will be having, see, we are Java developers, so we talk Java object, but it so happens that you can use any language. But all these languages today are object oriented languages. So in all the languages we store our values in what? Objects only. Like take the case of this now. You are having an employee TO. In the employee TO you will be having what? Int employee ID. Then you might have his name, string name. Then you might have what? Int salary. And this object will be having some values now. Like example, employee ID might be 101, name might be something like Ravi, and salary might be 1000 rupees. So this is your TO now. And these values would have come from the UI. If you see it in the broad angle, so these values might have come from the UI, user interface. User might have given these values. So enter your ID, then name, salary. So when the user enters these values, they will be entering into your application. Clear? They are in the primary memory now. So now, and it is present in what? Employee TO. You will collect all the values and store it into a TO now. So fine. After that, since they are in primary memory now, you want to store these values permanently into database. So obviously in the database, what will you do now? You will be having one table now. So what will be the design of your table now? We are discussing what is ORM now. The full form of ORM is what? Object Relational Mapping. We put on slash there. If you want to put, else leave it. Just to differentiate. Object Relational Mapping. So let's look at the table in the database now. You will be having what? Employee ID, name, salary. I am taking a very simple table here. Okay. So now see, the values are there in the TO. It is in the primary memory. And you are having a table in the database. Correct? So now generally what happens, if you want to store these values permanently, we have to use the database. And we end up using which database? RDBMS, Relational Database Management System will be using. Fine. So in this ORM concept, what happens is, what values are there in this TO, okay, will be directly stored into what? The table, directly. We will not be writing any query and all that. How means? Through a process called as mapping. Through a process called as mapping. That mapping can be done in two ways, either with the help of XML or with the help of annotations. That's what we will be learning. You don't have to worry. Clear? So we will do it with the help of mapping. Mapping can be done in two ways. Yes, one, what is that? XML, the other one is annotation. So it will be mapped. Map means what? This is the property. The property of the TO will be mapped with the column of the table. That's how the mapping will be done. Clear? So employee ID property will be mapped with what? Employee ID column of database. It will be mapped. You'll be doing some mapping through the help of what? XML or annotation. Similarly, name property of TO will be mapped with name column of table. Which table? Employee table. This is employee table. Similarly, salary property of TO will be mapped with what? Salary column of employee table. That's it. So now automatically what will happen when you say save or something, one method you will call, that's it. Automatically the values will be stored into database. It will be stored here. 101, Ravi, 1000. So this is what you mean by object relational mapping. You are mapping what? Object with the relational database. You are mapping the object with the relational database. This is object. See here I am using a very general word. I am saying object. Okay, because this object can be in any language. It can be in C# also, it can be in Java also. So fine. So the concept is what now? Object relational mapping. So we are going to see ORM in Java language. That's it. So this is object. Now this is what? Relational database. Correct? This is what we say relational. So this is object, this is relational, and finally they will be mapped. So that is why we say object relational mapping. So if you use this kind of technology or technology which supports ORM, what happens is the application development becomes faster also, easy also, and performance also will automatically increase. So this is the main idea of Hibernate now. So not only while saving, I told you about while saving this, even when you are reading also, if you want to write select query or something like that, automatically what will happen? The values from this row will be read and automatically they will be stored into the properties of this TO now. So this is the idea of ORM, object relational mapping. So very key concept, and it is because of this reason, main reason, why Hibernate is becoming very, very popular. So there are many ORM technologies in Java only. There are many ORM technologies, like as I told you, IBATIS, Top Link, Hibernate, many are there. Okay, but among all, Hibernate is the most dominating technology. Okay, so I just explained you what is ORM, and now let's see. Generally, we are seeing what is ORM generally. So after seeing what is generally ORM, then we will see in Hibernate what are the different features. So use this definition, a very simple definition in the interview. What is ORM? Full form of that is object relational mapping. That might be a question, and the next question would be what are the advantages of ORM? So we are right now discussing only ORM. So Hibernate is a technology which supports ORM. Remember that. First I am talking very generally about what is ORM. Then we will go to Hibernate. See this. See, ORM is a programming technique that maps the object to the relational database. You will be having an object, and that will be mapped directly to the database. So this concept is popular in many languages today. C# also it is there, Java also it is there. Okay, so we call that concept as what? Object relational mapping. But we are going to see ORM in Java language. We are going to learn. That's it. Fine. See, advantages of using ORM rather than traditional JDBC. What are the advantages? So ORM facilitates implementing the domain model pattern. There is one design pattern. Domain model pattern is one design pattern. Okay? What that design pattern means when you are creating your entities. Create entities means TO. TO you are creating now. So transfer objects. When you are creating your entities, create the entities based on the business logic, and don't create your entities based on the structure of your table. That is what it tells. Clear? So these ORM technologies, they facilitate this only. So that's the point. This one reason supersedes all others. In short, using this pattern means that you model entities based on real business concepts rather than based on your database structure. Clear? So when you are creating entities, you will be creating based on what? The business logic rather than the database tables. You are having a table. So generally entities are created based on what? Tables earlier, and there is a lot of confusion, but now you will be creating the entities based on business logic of your application. That's on design pattern, and ORM supports that design pattern. Which one? Domain model pattern. Fine. The next point now, huge reduction in code. Clear? ORM tools allow developers to focus on the business logic of the application rather than the repetitive CRUD logic. Means you will not be worried more about what? Insert, update, delete and all that. CRUD operations. You will not be worried on that. You will be only worried about what? Again, business logic of your application only. The next, changes to the object object model are made in one place. Once you update the values in the object, the ORM will automatically use the updated values for retrievals and updates. So if you make any changes in your TO, those updated values will be used throughout your application. That is what it means. Then next, there are no SQL update, delete and insert statements strewn throughout different layers of the application that need modification. Generally when you write SQL queries now, they need modification. Means you will be modifying those SQL queries. But now that is avoided. Clear? Because you will not be writing most of the SQL queries only. So that's what it means. There are no SQL update, delete and insert statements spread throughout the different layers of your application. So then next, rich query capability. What do you mean by rich query capability? Say, when you are working with databases, as I told you, you have to learn the native queries. One database will have its own native query. So depending on the database, you have to learn the SQL query, write your SQL query now. So now that is going to be avoided, because these ORM tools, now what they do, they give you one more querying style. They call it as OOQL, Object Oriented Querying Language. So we'll be seeing a new style of querying now. To work with database, we'll be using what? OOQL, means ORM tools provide Object Oriented Query Language, OOQL. One new querying style it is. Okay, it's some querying language. If you use this, you don't have to learn what? native queries only. So let it be any database. You are going to use what? OOQL. So that's it. So if you use this will only generate what? The OOQL will generate the required native SQL query. So you don't have to worry about learning the native SQL queries only, because for one database you will have one style of SQL querying. For DB2 you will have one, Sybase you will have one, MySQL you will have one, Oracle you will have one style. So it's really difficult for the developer to learn too many SQL queries. Done? So that's what it means. This allows application developers not to be concerned with the database structure. Means the different number of tables and all that, you don't have to bother. Or learn native SQL queries. You don't have to bother about the database structure also, or you don't have to bother about what? Learning the native SQL queries also. Then next, the ORM tool itself will translate the OOQL into the appropriate native SQL query for the database. It will only generate it. So that's what is the advantage. The next point is navigation. Navigation. So you can navigate object relationships transparently. Related objects are automatically loaded as needed. For example, if you load a student and you want to access its address, you can simply access student. The ORM will take care of loading the address data for you without any effort on your part. So generally when you design your tables, I'm explaining the meaning of that point. It's very important point actually, that navigation, how it happens. See, generally when you develop applications, you'll be going for one-to-many relationships and all that. Means you'll be having one student table. If this is the student table, you'll be having student ID, name, date of birth, all those details you'll be having in one table. If the student is having many address, obviously you'll be going for what? One more table. So you'll be having the address table now. And here what will happen? You'll have address ID, you'll have the student ID, which will be the foreign key. Then you'll be having city, state, like that. All this information will be storing now. This is the most important feature now. See what will happen here. Supposedly there is one student who is having two addresses. Yeah, his name is something like Kumar. Okay, and now he is having two addresses. Here in this table, this will be the primary key. Which one is the primary key? Student ID. Address ID also will be the primary key here. And if you know this, student ID here will be what? Foreign key. This is the foreign key and it will be linked to this. Yeah. So now see, one student is having two addresses. Okay, like he might have what? Address ID is 101. He is from the city Bangalore. State is Karnataka. He might have one more address. Means he is studying in Bangalore, but he is a native of what? Hubli or something. 101. He is a native of Hubli. Again, that also state is in Karnataka. I am writing it in short, Karnataka. Or let me write it fully only. So what will happen? You will write the query now. You want all the student details now. You will write the query. Okay, when you write the query, what will happen? You will join the tables and you will retrieve the data from both the tables, because you want what? The student and his address. Both are required now. But when you are using ORM, you don't have to bother about this. You write a query for retrieving what? The student. Automatically his child records will be retrieved only. So your developer is not worried about what now? Writing complicated queries, joins and all that, will not be worried only. So that will be the advantage now. So this navigation is very, very important now, which will be learning now. So if you load the student records, automatically his child records will be loaded. That's the meaning of that point. It is having intense meaning, and that meaning will be seeing more with examples only. It's just a concept I explained to you now. Clear? And the next point we'll be seeing. Okay. So these are the different advantages of ORM we are seeing. Still some more points are there. So if you use ORM technologies while developing your application, so automatically your application development becomes faster also, easy also, because of all this support what we get from ORM technologies. Clear? Now in this sixth point, the navigation point, what you saw was if you load the parent, automatically the child records will be loaded. That's what you saw. See, there's one more thing what you can do. Data loads are completely configurable. You can configure your data loads. Means how you want you can load your data. Means, see, data loads are completely configurable, allowing you to load the data appropriate for each scenario. Means, for example, in one scenario, you might want to load a list of students without any of its child records. Okay, related to objects. While in other scenario, you can specify to load a student with all its child items. So various requirements you might have, and ORM will support all of that. Sometimes you want only list, which one? Students. Sometimes you want what? Student with child records, like that. So whatever the case you have, or whatever the requirement you have in developing your web application, ORM tools will support all this. Clear? So these are the different points about what is ORM now. See, all these concepts, this is the what you mean by ORM. I just introduced you what is ORM now. ORM concepts are completely implemented in Hibernate framework. So we can say Hibernate is the best ORM tool among all the other tools like EJB2, iBatis, JDO, etc. Many people are trying to do that, which an ORM implementation. But Hibernate has done the best. Yeah, fine. So now we'll start off with what is Hibernate. What are the features, what are the advantages? So I listed all the points for you. You can make a note of all this now. See, Hibernate is a ORM, means object relational mapping framework. Because of this, Java objects will be mapped to relational entities, means database tables in the easiest way. So that's the main advantage of Hibernate. It will be mapped. You will have your TO, it will be mapped to the tables of the database. So while storing the values also it will be easy for you. While storing the values from what? TO to database, it will be easy. Automatically it will be stored. Similarly, when you are retrieving the values also, it will be easy. Because from the tables, it will be directly stored into the TO. These are the main advantage. So that is what you mean by ORM concept. Fine. Next, Hibernate provides features to perform CRUD operations across all the major relational databases. So this one technology can support what? Many databases. If you want, you can use Hibernate with what? Oracle, MySQL, DB2, Sybase, any database. So it is such a powerful technology and it supports all databases. That's one more advantage. Now see this, look at the problems of JDBC. When you are using JDBC, you are responsible for the following. See, developer is responsible for all this. You have to load the driver class. Yes, class.forName, you load now. Driver manager.get connection. Yes, establish the connection. The next, creation of appropriate statement. You have to decide whether to create a statement or prepared statement. Correct? Then you have to prepare the required SQL query and execute it. You have to prepare your query, insert into and all that. You have to prepare the query and you have to execute it. And after processing the results, clean up the resources like connections. So these much of tasks you end up writing what? Again and again, again and again, again and again. So that's what this ORM technology tell. Don't do all that. Clear? So now let's see what will Hibernate do now. See, now when you are using Hibernate, no need to perform the above task. Hibernate is responsible to establish the connections with the required database. It will only get the connection. It will only prepare the well-tuned SQL queries. It will only do the fine-tuning. Fine-tuning means what? It will only decide whether to use the statement, prepared statement. Then it will only decide whether to send us batch updates. It will only decide everything. So that's what is the advantage. See this. Now when you are using the Hibernate, no need to perform above tasks. Hibernate is responsible to establish the connections with required database, preparing the well-tuned SQL queries, clean up the resources, etc. JDBC API is completely hidden from Hibernate developers and no need to write the same boilerplate code again and again. Clear? So if you are, that is one side. Now sometimes when you are developing your application, you might use data source connections, data source connection pooling. That time, see, if you are using data source connection, you should use JNDI API to do the lookup. So when you are using Hibernate, then developer is not responsible to do the JNDI lookup and get the connection. So JNDI API is also hidden for the Hibernate developers. Means most of the API will be hidden for you now. You'll be working on the very top layer now. So means what is happening actually here is, see, this is what happens. You will have the database, clear? And you will be having JDBC here. JDBC is there, it is present, but it is abstract. We will not be seeing it. And Hibernate is here. This is Hibernate now. So Hibernate will internally use what? JDBC. And it will be interacting with database. But we will not be writing any JDBC code now. So all the code, what you write, clear? Using JDBC API will be removed now. That's what we mean by boilerplate code. Again and again, will not be writing all this code now. Are you clear with this? Fine. You'll be saying this. So Hibernate internally uses what? JDBC. Yeah? To interact with the database. Yes, next. What are the features? See, Hibernate supports powerful caching strategies and implementation. Clear? So what do you mean by caching? We'll see that now. See, generally you'll be having your database and you'll be having tables here. You'll be having many tables. Clear? And this will be your application now. So whenever you want now, what will your application do? It will connect to database, fetch the value, process all that, and it will be using it. But the problem is redundant now. Every time you want a value, you have to hit the database, get the value, process it. Again you need the value, hit the database, get the value, process it. There's one more thing what you can do. Instead of hitting the database every time, whenever you need a value, you can cache them and store it where? In your application itself. So what will you do? A cache is nothing but a duplicate copy of the values in the table now. So one copy you will keep here, one you will cache, and one copy will be maintained where now? Here only. So every time your application needs the value, you will be getting the value from here itself, and you will not be hitting the database. This is one more good advantage now. So Hibernate gives you very powerful caching strategies. Clear? So this is also one more main reason why we end up using Hibernate. So caching strategy is very powerful in Hibernate, okay, and it is supported by Hibernate in a very good way. But in JDBC and all, we don't get this extra support. Clear? So this is cache. C-A-C-H-E it is. That's the spelling. And the process of holding a cache is called as caching. Caching means you'll cache it and keep it in your application. So all this we'll be seeing with examples only. Just I am highlighting the features and advantages of Hibernate, because when you sit learning Hibernate, the first question what you'll be getting is, when JDBC is there, why should I learn Hibernate? So that's why we have to discuss all the advantages, features. So we are going with that itself now. So see this, Hibernate supports powerful caching strategies and implementation. Cache is a copy of the database which is near to the application in the application server. Okay, it is in the application server now. Means your server is there now, Tomcat and all you'll be using, or JBoss. One copy you'll keep it in the server. Means server, in the server only your application is running. That's the idea. So because having the local copy in the application server, we can reduce the network traffic between the application server and the database server, and because of caching implementation, performance of the application will be increased. Because generally it so happens in production environment, your application will be in one computer, database will be in another computer. So every time your application needs a record or values, it has to hit that database in some other computer, retrieve it, process it, means it's going to be time consuming. But if you are doing caching, what happens? One local copy will be stored in your application server, in your application only. So every time you need a value, you will retrieve it from there, process it, and you can do it faster also. So that will obviously reduce the network traffic between the application server and the database server, and definitely your performance of the application will increase. Fine. Next, Hibernate supports batch update concept to a great extent. Hibernate always uses batch updates internally to submit the queries to SQL engine. Because of the batch updates, traffic between application server and database server will be reduced and performance of the application will be increased. So in JDBC, you are responsible to create the batches. Correct? st.add batch, st.add batch, and you have to send the batch and all that. But here what happens? It will be happening automatically. You don't have to worry. Hibernate will take care of creating the batches and submitting the batches to the database automatically. So obviously your performance of the application increases. Then next, Hibernate provides very good key management. Okay, means identifiers or primary key are automatically propagated and managed. So here what happens, your primary key and all can be generated automatically with the help of Hibernate. Clear? And one thing, this point you'll be understanding later. Now what is the difference between identifier or primary key? Identifier is the word related with your TO. In your TO you'll have one property called as employee ID, that is called as identifier. So identifier is the word used in your TOs. Okay, primary key is the word used in tables of database. So identifiers or primary key are automatically propagated and generated and managed. It will be managed. We'll be seeing it with examples only. The next point, Hibernate provides flexible and powerful transaction model. Hibernate supports both local and distributed transaction. When developer needs local transaction, then Hibernate uses JDBC transaction management. When developer needs distributed transaction, then Hibernate can be configured to use JTA transaction management also. So see, you have got transaction support in JDBC also, but the transaction support in JDBC is supporting only local transactions. Local transaction means you can interact with a single database, but sometimes you want to interact with multiple databases. So that is when you will need what? 2 or more databases. You want distributed transaction management. So for doing such kind of transaction and all, there is one special dedicated API called as JTA. Full form of JTA is Java Transaction API. So if you want to do distributed transaction, you have to use this API now. Yes. So Hibernate can be configured to use what now? JTA also. And it supports you what? Both local transaction as well as distributed transaction. So powerful it is. Then next, Hibernate provides very good transaction management support. What is that? See, all object changes which occur are scoped to a transaction. Any changes you do are scoped to what? A boundary of a transaction. The entire transaction can either be committed or rolled back. Either you want to commit the transaction or roll back the transaction. Now multiple transactions can be active in memory in the same time, and each transaction changes are isolated from one another. So we are definitely using a web application. When the web application, in web applications what happens generally, there will be too many concurrent users. Concurrent users means many people will be accessing the data at the same time. That is the problem. But still see, multiple transactions can be active in memory in the same time, and each transaction changes are isolated from one another. Means every transaction is separate. Isolated means separate from one another. Then next, Hibernate provides very good concurrency support when multiple users are updating the same data simultaneously. So very good concurrency support is there when multiple users are working with the same data, and this is a high possible chance because we are dealing with what? Web applications. So it gives you very good concurrency support also. Then next, Hibernate provides support for both driver manager database connections as well as what? Data source database connections. Generally there are 2 types of database connections we use. Driver manager database connection as well as data source database connection. So Hibernate supports both. Whichever you want, you can use it. Then next, Hibernate provides powerful object-oriented query language. Hibernate provides the following OOQL. There are 3 types of OOQL, object-oriented query language. HQL, QBC, QBE. The full form of HQL is Hibernate Query Language. The full form of QBC is Query by Criteria. The full form of QBE is Query by Example. So in OOQL only there are 3 classifications, and which Hibernate is giving you, and these are very very powerful querying languages what Hibernate is giving you, and you can write any good query with this. So first understand the difference between SQL and OOQL. SQL we query on database. In SQL, we query on database. In OOQL, here we query on what? Objects. You'll be querying on the object. So that is the major difference between SQL and OOQL. And Hibernate is giving you very good support for what? OOQL. In Hibernate there are 3 OOQL. What are they? HQL, Hibernate query language, QBC, query by criteria, and one more is QBE, query by example. We'll be seeing examples for all. You don't have to worry. We are just discussing the features of Hibernate. All these features we have to learn one by one now. Then the next point here is even Hibernate supports what a stored procedure invocation. Supposing you have got a stored procedure, Hibernate will support even that stored procedure invocation also. Yeah, we saw this. Hibernate is providing some powerful OOQL. The advantage of OOQL, you know, no? You don't have to learn native SQL queries. That's the advantage. Fine. Then we are seeing the next point now. As an overall tool, Hibernate also supports what? Stored procedure invocation. The next, Hibernate allows you to persist various types of data, including primitives, strings, wrapper objects, date, time, list, set, map, arrays, etc. Means you'll be holding data in many type of objects like this. Sometimes you'll be storing data in what? List. Sometimes you'll be storing data in maps as key value pair. Sometimes you'll be storing values as array. Okay. Sometimes you want to persist date. Sometimes you want to persist primitive like long, int and all that. Means, see, when you are developing your application, you'll be holding the values in primary memory. When you are holding the values in primary memory, you'll be using any of these data types to store your values. Now data from this has to be stored into what now? Secondary memory. Secondary memory is your database. So from here you have to put it into database. Means it is a huge task what you are asking. Means directly you want to store from what now? List into database, or set into database, or map into database. It's a big thing. So Hibernate will support that also. But if you are using JDBC now, it is the duty of the developer to retrieve the values from what? The collections, the map and all that, and store it into the database. But here you will do some mapping and automatically values from all these data types will be stored into what? Database. That's one more brilliant feature of Hibernate. Very important feature. And next, the last point, but most important point, Hibernate is implementing JPA, which is the standard for ORM persistent technology. See what happened, we studied what is ORM. What is ORM? Object Relational Mapping. And to support ORM, many vendors came in the market, like TopLink, Hibernate, Ibatis, many vendors came. So these are all what? Proprietary solutions. Yes or no? These are all proprietary solutions. So how many proprietary solutions you will go on learning now? So we needed a standard. So a standard was released by Sun called as JPA, Java Persistence API. Next, this is what is upcoming. Clear? So this is an API released by whom now? Sun, for all the ORM vendors. Means whoever is a ORM vendor today, like it might be Hibernate or TopLink or Ibatis, all the ORM vendors should implement what? JPA. And Hibernate is doing that also. So you'll be seeing that when I teach you JPA, I'll be covering all that topic also. Yeah. So just understand that Hibernate is implementing JPA API also. Fine. Now we'll move to difference between JDBC and Hibernate, which is a very, very important interview question. What is advantage, disadvantage and all they'll ask. So see, in JDBC now, you are supposed to manage the resources like getting database connection or closing database connection. If you do not manage the resources properly, it affects the performance of the application. This is in JDBC. Hibernate implicitly manages all the database resources, so performance of the application will increase. Fine. Next point. In JDBC, you have to fine tune the SQL queries. If you don't fine tune the SQL queries, it will reduce the performance of your application. SQL queries are implicitly fine tuned in Hibernate, so performance will increase. In JDBC, you are responsible for doing the batch update. In Hibernate, batch updates will be done implicitly. JDBC does not provide any implicit support for caching. Instead, developer has to do it explicitly. Hibernate implicitly provides many techniques for caching mechanism. Next point, JDBC allows us to persist very few data types like primitive variables, string and date. When you are working with JDBC, and if you want to store values from primary memory to database, it will support you only values stored in which data type? Primitive variables or string or date. But Hibernate allows us to persist various data types like primitive variables, string, date, list, map, arrays. Means if you are having values in list or map, array, still Hibernate supports you to store the data. But that is not supported by JDBC, because in JDBC we have to explicitly retrieve the value one by one and then store the values one by one in to the database. But in Hibernate it is built-in support what you will be getting. So in JDBC, a developer should know native SQL query. When you are using JDBC now, it is mandatory that you have to learn what? The native SQL query of the database. But here Hibernate provides powerful querying languages like OOQL, that is object oriented query language, like QBC means query by criteria, QBE query by example, like that. Many it gives you. And in Hibernate we query on Java objects and not on database. That's what I was telling you. OOQL is querying on what? Objects. So in Hibernate we query on Java objects and not on database, so no need to learn native SQL queries. So you are relieved of it. So these are the various advantages if you use Hibernate in your project. And obviously many things will happen. Means performance will increase, coding reduces, okay, and many advantages are there which we'll be seeing as we go through the examples. So just I have given you an overview of what is Hibernate, where we stand, where it is used and all that, and what are the advantages of using it. So in the next class we'll start seeing the practical session of Hibernate, and I'll be introducing ORM. That's it.